What's he talking? He brings us, see, it reminds me of the story of a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, in the 80s. He was part of an organization that in South Africa, they were given the responsibility to rehabilitate wildlife back into the wild. And one of the responsibilities was, in the 80s, the fish eagle. In fact, that eagle, I don't know if that's most probably a bald eagle that's on there, but that's great that it's on there, because this story you can relate to the eagle. The fish eagle was endangered species. It was in danger of dying out. So they were given the opportunity and the mandate to rehabilitate domesticated birds or captive birds back into the wild. And these guys had no clue how to do it. They were just eager to do it. And they were given a full-grown fish eagle from the Pretoria Zoo that had been in the Pretoria Zoo for 10 years, right from its birth. It lived in a cage, big enough, though, for it to stretch its wings, but that's it. Never knew how to fly, never learned how to fly. It sat in that cage for 10 years. And so they were given the mandate of releasing this bird back into the wild. And so they were so excited. So when the bird arrived, they had it there. They fed it, made sure that it was healthy. They doctored it. They made sure that it had all the sustenance it needed. And the day came when they took it out, and they took it into the Kruger National Park, and they took it to a place that would be a perfect habitat for a fish eagle. Now, how many of you know that a fish eagle has a tremendous call, the call of the fish eagle? If you've heard the fish eagle call, then you'll never forget it. And so here was these guys. I mean, they were just green in this. They didn't know what to do. So they took this bird out there, and they took the bird out of the cage, and they set it down on a rock. And he said, Arthur, the strangest thing, he says, we took this bird out of the cage, and he says that bird just sat on that rock the same way it sat in the cage. Just sat there. He says, oblivious about its surroundings. He said, most of the time, just having his eyes closed, just sitting there. Every now and then he'd open his eyes and just look around and just close it again. And he said, so he thinks to himself, he says, okay, what we're going to do, he says, we're going to go behind the bird, and then we're going to shoo the bird. We're going to go behind the bird, and we're going to go, shoo, shoo, and it will take off and fly. So they go behind the bird, and he says, they go, shoo, shoo, and he says the bird just hops off, just stays that distance away from them. Wherever. So shoo, 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 the whole day, all morning, shoo, this poor bird is just hopping around, and then it sits. And he says, this is the thing that really hit him. He says, it was easier to get the bird out of the cage than to get the cage out of the bird. You see, 2,000 years ago, Jesus set you free. And it was easier for Jesus to set you free and to get you out of bondage than to get the bondage out of you. And I thought, man, that's powerful. I said, what did you do? He said, man, I thought the best thing to do is get a nice long stick, and I'll prod the bird. So he gets a stick, and he's prodding the bird. As he said, I said, that reminds me of the church. We go and we find people, and we scare them. And we preach hellfire and brimstone, and we try to shoo them into the kingdom. Then if that doesn't work, we get a stick out, proverbial stick, and we beat them. Pow, pow, I'm going to beat you into the kingdom. And all it does is drive them further away from God. And boy, I thought to myself, man, I said, well, what happened? He said, Arthur, the bird back in the cage. Because he says, if we left it there, the wild animals will eat it. He says, just as we are about to catch the bird, a wild fish eagle flew over the mountain. And it called out. He says the most amazing thing happened. He says this bird, who wasn't interested in anything, he says when that wild fish eagle called out, he says the lights came on. He says the eyes opened. He says when the second call came, he's looking around. The third call came, he's looking up in the sky. He says he's obviously awake. It's like he said the lights came on. He says by the fourth, fifth call, this bird who had never learned to fly took off in flight. He said it was not pretty. He says this bird took off, and he says never got higher than this far off the ground, and flew straight into a tree, gathered itself, feathers all over the place. Hallelujah. He says when that other fish eagle called out again, it took off again. He says within 35 to 40 minutes, that fish eagle who had never learned to fly was flying with the wild fish eagle. Now, this is what he said. He said to me, how's that? He says, you know why? He says the fish eagle was designed to fly. It was in his genes to fly. Oh, come on now. Hallelujah. It was in him. It's in his genes. It's who he is. It's where he comes from. Hallelujah. Listen, you are a God being. You are a God being. You come from God. And I hope that this week has been the call that you're listening to, and it's waking up your heart, that you may know. See, I can't teach you into the kingdom. I can't teach you into your identity. You're going to have to get the call.